All right, so we are working on exercise number 30. Start from there, 31. And then if you are done with that, start with 32. So both are kind of similar. 31 writes some code for you, and then what you have to do, you have to access these properties. 32 is where you actually have to create the whole properties from scratch. You can use the code from 31 as in help to do the 32 exercise, because there's no code for 32. You have to create everything by from scratch. But 31 gives you an idea. So start with 31. Study the object first. Look at some of the things, how the functions are working, and then ask what's going on. And then we can discuss in the solution. But I want you guys to kind of look through it, understand how the object is, and how do you access this. That's 31. Yes.
So the way that it works, so this is the object, and this is the so for like me.
Oh, no, this is just how you call a function. Like we did in this exercise. How do you call a function? Yeah.
It's the function,
Name of the function.
and then you have the property and the value, right?
So, right. No, this is you're defining the function. The function is already defined, but when now you want to call the function. So how do you, if you're using the keyword function, this means you are defining a function. So this is already done for you, car to drive, right? On the top, if you look at the object, there's a function called something like this. So this is the definition. Now you want to call this function, right? How do you call a function? You say the name of the function, right? That's how you call it. In the previous exercise, and then you have parentheses. This is how you call it, right? But in this case, this function is inside the object, right? Right. So what do you have to do extra? You have to put in the object name, and then say dot, and then call the first one. Okay. So since this function is inside an object, you have to put in the object name, dot, and because this function is a property inside the object.
You have to list this container first.
So
Yes,
the
you have to
object
list it,
is
and
right
then- and then.
But for functions, you need to do parentheses.
Yes, this is absolutely necessary. It's not difficult. So this is the object. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 properties and 1, 2, 3, 4 methods. Okay, similar to what I showed you. The properties are strings, there's a number property, there's a boolean, and then you have all these functions within this object over here. 1, 2, 3, 4 functions. And how do we do this? How do we log the car's make? Basically, you need to access this property make over here. So log. Oh, come on, what happened? So you're going to console log. How do you access the property? The name of the object first, and then the property you're trying to access. In this case, you're trying to access the make, and this is how it will show up. Let's go ahead and check this out. Make sure this is good. And there's my make that shows up. Same thing with the model. You're going to do a console log. What happened to my console logs? Oh, because I've been HTML, that's why. Then you go to console log car dot model, and it's going to output the model. Mileage, same thing. console.log car, name of the object, and then the property that you're trying to output. Okay, so these are a little bit simpler properties. How do you access the functions now? Functions or method. How would we run the car's drive function? So same thing, just like properties. Access the function like you're accessing the other properties. So start with the object name car dot and then the function that you're trying to access. Drive to work. Since this is a function, you need the parentheses. From the previous exercises, remember we are defining functions, and how do you call? You put the function name and then parentheses, right? Exactly the same thing. The only difference is you are putting an object name. Why? Because this function only exists inside this object. That's why. You see, this function is actually inside this object, and that's how you would access this function. Right now, nothing. Why nothing? Because my function is not taking any parameter. If there was something over here, then you need to pass that in. Right now, it's empty. That's just a syntax, yes. You need the parentheses whether you are not passing anything or you're passing anything, yes. And the same way, complete the other two methods. And if you're done with this one, take a look at number 32. That's a little bit more difficult than this one. Same object, uh, but this time you can copy it from here or make sure you type everything out into the new exercise. So, any questions on this exercise? Something that is given but you don't understand from this object one. Yeah, you don't have to modify the function, but you need to understand. Yes. Yes.
In my head, I was like, oh, I wonder what it wants me to do, but it's just that
Right. It wants you to call. These functions are defined. Yes.
So the next one would be just the same thing, the car dot, just drive away.
Right. The next one is you don't have any of these. You have to create it manually. In the next exercise, you have to do everything by hand plus some extra functionality. In the next one. Yes.
So that's to log them. First three console log for the function, ones were not console log.
Okay.
Why is that?
Okay, because when I did console log,
Right. Why do you how are you calling the function? Are you doing console log and then function?
yeah,
So that's the problem. Right. You don't need the function log or anything. Why? Because if you take this function log and the function log and what's happening is you are saying console. So what's going on is you are saying console dot log, right? And then car dot drive to work, right? This is what you do. What is happening is Is drive toward returning anything? Is this function returning anything? No. So what is console log going to write out? Undefined. Why? Because it's not returning anything.
So I would have to pass in an argument.
You have to return something for this to understand. Right now, this doesn't return anything. So that's why it prints out, oh, undefined. Or just remove this console log because it's not returning anything. It doesn't, console log doesn't really do anything. Because you are passing in unless you return something. Because console log is a function itself, right? Console.log, right? It's a function within this object because I'm using a documentation somewhere in the JavaScript, right? So this function is expecting that whatever you put in over there is going to write it out. But in this case, it returns me nothing. It's empty, right? So it basically says, oh, undefined. I don't know what you were returning.
Yeah, there's nothing
All right. Any other questions which is kind of looks different from what we have done? All right. Somebody just say what is this keyword doing over here? I'm not going to. This. What is this? So we haven't looked at it. That's what I was trying to get to. But somebody just say, oh, what is this doing over here? What does this mean? Any idea what is this new keyword this doing over here? Why do I need this? What if I remove this from here? What happens? Did anybody try that? All right, so I have a function, and within my function, I'm trying to access some property. And where is this property present? It's within the same object, right? Is it outside this object? No. So I'm trying to access a property which is inside my object where my function is also present. Okay, so all of this is inside the same object. So my object has some properties and then it has some function, but all of them reside within the same object. Okay, now within a function, if I want to access a property, how do I do it outside? I say object name dot mileage, right? If I'm trying to access a property within my object, it's the same thing. You have to say car dot mileage, and then you have to do car dot mileage. Same way you have to access outside. Okay? This is the only way you can access any property that resides within an object, whether the function is inside an object or outside the object. Now, saying this is redundant in JavaScript, so this is why it is all replaced with the keyword this. JavaScript understands the property that you are trying to access, which has this before it. It knows that the property over here is going to be within this object. So that's why we don't mention the object name over here. It's kind of redundant. It's kind of already known. You will never, in a function within an object, you will never see somebody saying car.mileage. This is reserved for when you're trying to access it outside the object. But the concept is still the same. You still need an object name. So within the function, you will see these being replaced with this. What does this mean? Hey, find this property. Where is it present? It's present inside this object. Like it's within my own area. This property resides somewhere within the same object, so go ahead and access that property. If you remove the keyword this, it's not going to work. It doesn't know what mileage is. It's going to look for mileage which is outside this object. Okay? If you remove the keyword this, you don't mention the object, this one, JavaScript is going to look for this property, this variable outside the object. Okay? Remember that. If you don't put the keyword this, it's going to give you, now if you run it, it's going to give you an error saying mileage is not defined. Why? Because now it's going to skip the whole object. It's going to look for a value or a variable that is declared outside this object. So what it is looking for is something like this. If you don't put the keyword this is what it is now looking for. If you put this, everything is good. but that's the wrong property that you're trying to access a property which is inside this object. Okay, the way to access this within the object is to use the keyword this. This again, same thing just like an object. So this is a object, and then there's a property mileage within it. Okay.
This is just referring to the variable car.
This, yes, the variable car object, yes.
It would be whatever if the variable were to change the port.
Yes.
Something would be
Right. So I can
referring to
change. Yes, I can change this to car 2. This will still work. That's the benefit of it. You don't have to go back and kind of keep changing these things over here. Okay. Again, this is the same as putting the object name over here, but you will never see anybody doing it. That's not how it is done. Within the object, you would use the keyword this. Okay. So if you want to access a property which is defined within the same object where your function is, we're going to use an access using the keyword this. Okay? All right, any questions from this exercise? Okay? Do? No? This. All right, so let's do, then if you are good with this, try the next one. The next one is similar. You can copy the code from this one and start using it. It's up to you, but I would recommend, try to create the object on your own at least once or twice so that you are aware how to do it. Create the same object and then complete the next one. Next one has, you need to add a little more properties from it. Let's look at 32. So yeah, this time you don't have a template, you don't have anything, but it's using the same car object. You can copy it from the previous exercise or actually go ahead and create it on your own. So you can use it as a starting point. Same thing. Then you need to add a new function or a new method to it, which is called rewrite stats. See how would you do it, and then I'll start coding this halfway through. So users can enter keyboard input. Remember from rock paper scissors game, what do you need to do? And go back to it and remember document.onKey. So it's kind of combining all those together in one now.
And if you want to
So I'm going to start with the same index and CSS and connect those. Oh, why did I create a string? Rename card game.js. So go ahead and create the same car object, and I'm going to create it so that kind of get in the habit, get some practice. What would the properties make? Model, put in some model, color, property, let's say black. Then there was mileage, say 30,000 mileage. Boolean is working, so true. Okay, and then there was some functions. There was drive to work function. It's a function, no parameters, and then the function body. And I'll come and fill those in. So I'm going to stub those functions out to make sure all my parentheses, everything is good. It doesn't give me an error. The next method was drive the word. Right, same thing, create a function, parentheses, curly braces. That's it. We'll come back and fill this function body. Get tune up. It's a function with no parameters. What else was there? Honk function. All right, formatted. Okay, so this is my complete object from the previous exercise. Okay. Some properties and 4 functions. And these functions were I'm not going to use alert. I hate. What happened to my? Oh. Why is it not completing my console log? Start now. Um, 33. Oh, there it is. Old mileage is how do I access the properties within an object with this keyword? So this dot mileage. Okay. This dot mileage is we are adding something to the mileage. Let's suppose my work is 10 miles, so adds this, and the new mileage is this dot. Okay, I only replaced it with the alert, and that becomes annoying. Let's see, drive around the world. How many miles is that adding? So same thing, I'm just going to copy function body from the previous example. I'm going to replace this with console log. Oops. Console.log. Mileage update the mileage, and then this dot working is false. Okay, interesting. So if I drive 24,000 miles, my car needs a tune-up. Okay. Get tune-up function from the previous one is replace it with console log again. Again, you don't have to do this. I'm doing it because I don't like the alerts kind of blocking my whole window. And then honk is console log honk honk console. Okay, so we just recreated the whole object from the previous exercise. Let's go ahead and test this out. Let's see. Car.drive to work is working. We can go back here. Oh, unexpected identifier. So I'm missing a comma. Okay, that should fix that. Let's go back to console, and there's my drive to work. Okay. Similarly, I can test my get tune up method. Oops, car dot get tune up, and car is ready to go. Okay, this one is working too. Car dot honk. Let's test that out, and that is also working. Okay, so I just recreated the whole object from the previous exercise, and then you have to go ahead and do the on key up event from the previous one. So you have to use the on key up and then kind of read what keys the user is typing. For example, if they type in H, you are going to call the function honk, and then assign some keys to the rest of them. But that's one example. Like if the user hits the key H, just like the rock paper scissors game, right? If they hit H, then you're going to call this function. Okay, right now it just gets called every single time, but eventually the exercise is saying when the user hits, let's suppose H key, then call car dot honk method. Start with this. How would you do this? Oops. It's kind of a combination of the rock paper scissors game. Remember document.keyup. See how you used over there. Same thing. And then when somebody hits H, then only this method gets called. Right now, once you render the whole page, it's getting called. We don't want that. We want only when somebody hits the H key. And if you are following along, if you're doing it the way that I'm doing, I have a script tag in my HTML and my CS, my JavaScript is in a different file. You probably are going to run into an issue over here. So see if you are following along. If you do, see how you can resolve that issue. And then I'm going to have the same issue, but I know the solution for it. So I'll have to go back and fix that. So if you did this from the rock paper scissors game document dot on key up, okay, and then function event, okay. I hope this function kind of makes more sense now. The document dot key up is a function which is getting an event passed in. But this is what you have to do from the previous exercise. And over here, you're going to use the if statement and check if event.key is age, which means somebody hit the age key, then go ahead and call this function. So let's suppose var letter press is equal to, I'm going to get the key that was hit and then convert into lowercase, because that's the check I'm going to make. If somebody hits an uppercase H or something, I'm just making it lowercase so that I can have the same condition for both of them. So the next is that if condition, if letter is equal to H, right? What do I want to do? I want to call the car.honk method. Okay?
Why are the curly brackets?
Where? Line number?
For your
40?
What do we put in the
Right. What is honk? Right. It goes up here, but what is it?
The function.
It's a function. How do you call a function? This is how you call a function. It's function name and then parentheses. Right. That's it. Okay, so you get the, now if I press H, it should say something. Oops. So if you were following how I did it, if you had your JavaScript within your HTML, you will not get this error. But if you did not, if you did it like the way I have done it, you will get this error. Yes, keep going on. Chris, you're on the right path. Say it.
Yeah, because your JavaScript file is below or something.
Yes. Yes. So remember, I was saying that you can put your JavaScript file either in the head or in the body. This is one of the cases where you want your JavaScript in the body tag. Why? So this is how the sequence goes. You render the page, it starts from here, renders this, then goes line 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it comes over here. So when it sees this, it says, oh, there's an external file. Now I have to switch gears and go into this file and start executing the code that is present over here. Okay? So it comes over here, it stops everything. And then it comes over here, starts executing the code that is defined in this one. Okay, it does this, then it comes up over here. It fails on this thing, this document. What is document? What is the data type for this document? What is the data type for this Word document? What is it? The data type for this variable called document. Keep going through all of them. One of them is it. Is it a number?
Whatever you declared, right?
Like, so by looking at the syntax, you can take a guess that what is the data type of this object. String? No. There's a object. Guys, 90% of the time the answer is object. Just say object, and there's a greater chance that's the answer. Yeah, I said you have arrays and you have an object, right? Again, it's not a strictly a data type, but that's what with our knowledge, that's still okay. So what is this? Why is it an object? Remember this dot thing? Object is the one that uses the dot notation. So anywhere you see a dot, the left hand of this dot is definitely an object. Okay? Now I know this is an object. What is this? It's a function, and where is this function resides? In the object that is called document. Success. Yes. Okay, you guys see it now? So there's an object that is defined, but what is happening is my HTML has not completed. This document object is kind of special. It only populates once your body tag is rendered completely. Okay, we'll see in jQuery what document object does, but that's one of the issues is that your processing stops over here and it goes and tries to run this code. When it runs this code, this document object is not available yet. It's going to be available at the end of your body tag. So that's why it crashes. So all you need to do is you have to move this script and move it inside your body towards the end. If you have some HTML on the top, just move it towards the end. Now what's going to happen? Let's test it out before it.
It's supposed to be a letter press.
Okay. All right. So now what happens is my head tag completes, goes through my body, completes all the HTML, renders everything. Everything is good. Then it goes ahead and executes the JavaScript. So in this case, when you are dealing with events, that's where you need to put in your JavaScript at the end of your body. Okay. There are other ways, and then we will see those next week. When we're using jQuery, there's a method that will make sure that your HTML is rendered completely. Then it's going to execute this file. But for now, this is a solution to fix that issue. If you move this back to your head, you will run into an issue where it's going to complain, oh, I don't know what document object is. Why? Because it hasn't rendered completely. Okay, but if you're using it in your HTML, you wouldn't run into this issue. It's the same issue some people ran when they were using the rock paper scissors game. Same thing. So the solution is you need to move it down. And why? Because again, it's Java. The HTML is rendering line by line. It goes here, here, here. As soon as it runs into this, it knows that there's an external file, so it will stop over there and then go here and then start executing the lines over here and then come back over here. Okay, so that's why you need to move it right, because you want to make sure that everything is complete, then go ahead and do the JavaScript. Why? Because of this event and this object over here. This object only is available once your body tag and everything completes. It's not available before that. That's why you have to put it down. Okay, otherwise this is the starting point for that solution. Other stuff, you can assign different keys to it and then call different functions. Any questions? Yes.
Where does that document object exist?
It is a global object that comes built in with the JavaScript engine. So this is what we call a global object. Okay. Once you get used to it, once you are looking at the documentation, you will kind of identify these objects pretty quickly. For now we understand documents. So every time you see a document, you know that this is a global object that is available to me everywhere.
What are some other global objects?
Window, console. Console is another global object. Why? Because you have these functions, console.log, you haven't declared this object, you are just using it. Console is one of them. Window, document. And there are a few more as we go through. I'll go through them, but these are the three that we have studied. Window, document, console. Yes, Miru, you had a question? Who? Oh, no. Before you. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Yes.
Okay, so execute all of that value multiple times.
Yes.
How do you turn that into an object?
How do you turn an if into an object?
Instead of have to write if letter press
You are saying, how do I convert it into a function? Is that what you're... So you cannot convert ifs into an object. I think you're trying to say, how do I convert it into a function? Maybe? Right. So basically you are saying that how do you convert into a function? How do you write one function that does the work for you? Okay, so you can create a function and then pass in the letter, but you still will have to do this. I don't think you can get away from this. Why? Because your case is dependent on, oh, if this is this, then do this, right? Well, your next case would be if it is something else, like P, right? Then do car dot this thing, right? So you still need it. Why? Because I understand what is common over here. It's still not as common as our array example. Why? Because on a different letter, you're calling a totally different method. So it's kind of hard to put that into a one general function and then still do it. You still will require this if conditions. The only thing you can do is that you can separate this out and in a function, and it will just look nicer. Like you can call, oops. You can create a function, say process key press, and then you pass in the letter press, and within this method you can have all these if conditions. Let's go ahead and create this function over here. Function what did we call this? Process key pressed, and then it takes in a letter, and then it does the same thing over here. This is something you can do. So now your on key up kind of looks nice and clean, and it's going to still call a function where all your code is over here. This is something you can do.
So you could put each key, you could put something for it to do. So.
Yeah, you have to do this. Yeah, there's no escape from this part. But you can kind of make it cleaner. Your document or key up is now still literally like 2 lines. If nobody is interested in this function, I can just read it and I know what's going to happen is it's going to process. Maybe I'm not worried about how it is going to do, but I understand that this will take care of what I'm trying to do. So this is one way you can do it, like create a function and put everything. But within the function, you still have to have these if statements. That's a better, cleaner way versus putting all the ifs over here. Right? All right, any other questions? All right, let me introduce you one last more confusing concept before you guys go. And this is all right. Let's see. Scope. Yes. All right. So I have my index, and I have 2 JavaScript files, same as every other example. This is okay. This is called scope. What does scope mean in JavaScript? Scope is basically your visibility of your variables. Like how far can I access those variables? Okay. For example, if you declare a variable on the top of your program, this is called a global variable. What this means is this variable is available throughout your file and even any other file that you have attached to your HTML. So this variable, it's crazy. This variable, I have my 2 scope, right? I have this one and this one, both are part of this HTML, so this is part of the whole project. Now, the variable that I declare in scope.js is actually so global that it is also available in your next file. So if I do a console log of this variable, it's actually going to work and give me a console log. Okay, do you see I created this variable in my scope.js in a different file, but I can access it in my other JavaScript file. And how are they linked? They are linked because in my index I have both of them defined over here. That's the linkage. It won't work if you have not linked. But the global part is it is so global that it can be accessed within different files. Okay, understand this, keep a note of it. This has troubled me when I was learning JavaScript. I had a variable over here, and then I created the same variable name. As I said, I'm not as innovative. I can come up with different names. So I was like, okay, I'm going to use the same name over here as a new variable. But what was happening is whatever value that you set in over here is going to be accessible over here. So this is called a global variable. So if you have two variables within the same name and your intention is not to have the same variables, it's going to mess up your code. So if you're doing this, it has to be intentional. These are called global variable, which are accessible throughout your program. Okay, anybody can access them, right? Some are kind of like a local variable. Let's say first function. If I declare a variable here, local variable not visible outside this function. So I have a function and I'm going to call this function here. Okay, any variable that I declare within my function, its scope is limited to these parentheses. Okay, it cannot be accessed outside. For example, if I do console log local var, it's going to give me an error. The scope is limited to these parentheses over here, these curly braces. Okay, so any variable that you define inside a function, that's where the scope is. It cannot be accessed outside the function. Okay, now can my function access this variable? Yes, it can, because this is a global variable. It is available to everyone and everywhere. So I can actually access this global var, and this is still fine. Okay, so I can access the variable that are outside, defined outside the function within my function, but anything that I declare inside my function is not accessible outside. Yes. Yes, being declared somewhere, right? So you can declare a variable here that's still global because it's not part of anything. It's part of the main file. So this is also global. Anything that is outside basically a function is a global variable. Okay, it's not part of a function. It's not part of anything. Anything that you declare outside it, it becomes a global variable. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Well, they don't have to. You can create a variable over here as well, but the sequence is this gets rendered first. So that's why if you try to access over here, it's going to give you an error. But yes, it has to be present somewhere. Okay. Global variable, anything inside a function is not accessible outside and within these nice curly braces. Okay. Does that make sense for now? All right. Here is even more interesting part. Now take a guess. I have a for loop. Okay, I have variable I. Let's say I'm going to run this four times. Console log I. Okay, Let's fix this issue. Remove this. Okay, and it is outputting these values, right? Simple. Now, where am I declaring the variable I? Inside over here. Okay, what is the scope of I? Can I access it outside, or it finishes over here? Right? I mean, it would make sense that it finishes over here, but this is JavaScript. It's actually a global variable, if you can believe it. This I can actually be accessed from even outside, and the 4 value is the latest one that was written. So I can even access it from here. That's how crazy this is. Yes, welcome to JavaScript. All right, one more time. So the only local scope is within the function. The function, somehow some genius was like, oh, I'm going to make a scope within the function, but I'm going to forget everything else. Okay, so there's a scope, and they have the good scope over here. It's not accessible outside. In every other language, this is true, and this variable is not accessible anywhere. But in JavaScript, anything outside a function is literally a global function, as a global variable. So even if you have an if statement, if you say if true, and then you create a variable, this is inside if. Okay, guess what? You can access it outside as well over here. No more global. Okay, this is inside if. Okay, you see, I'm not even console logging this inside the if. I'm console logging over here, but this variable is accessible everywhere. Yes.
So if you do this before, you absolutely not.
Exactly, and that's what we were talking about. That's why we are creating new variables, because if you reuse them, there's a potential. Why? Because these are global variables. If you are using the same letter somewhere else, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get wrong values. All right? Yes.
So then what's the difference between, or this y before it's
Why it works in functions? Why it doesn't work over here?
not?
Because it's JavaScript. That's how they have defined the scoping in JavaScript. That's the reason. I mean, that's how they have defined. I don't know what the reason. There's no reason. Hmm?
Only for global?
Only for global.
No.
What do you mean? Right. So why it is like this? I don't know. That's how the scope is, and that's what we are studying. So JavaScript follows something called lexical scoping, and what they say is, oh, this makes somehow sense that it should not be accessible, but this doesn't make sense, so we are going to make it global. That's how it is. And I'll tell you quickly how to fix this issue, but does everybody understand the scope? The scope within a function, if you create a variable within the function, it's as how it is makes sense. It should be only visible within these curly braces. Anything other than a function, if you have a for loop or an if statement, if you're using a variable declared inside these two parentheses, it's basically a global variable. You can access it anywhere else. Okay? Now, of course, this is an issue, and no other language that I know does this. So later in the new versions of JavaScript that we all are using, they came up with a keyword called let. That's where the let is. Okay, let is exactly the same thing as using a var. The only difference is it follows the scoping mechanism for everything. Okay, for example, if I replace my var with a let, now I cannot access this I, because the scope is now, as we would think, within this parentheses. Okay, that's why. So this is let is available in the new JavaScript version, which we all are using, so you don't have to worry about it. And that's why we prefer using let instead of a var. Same thing. The only difference is let follows the scoping like any sensible language. It took them 6 versions to come up with this keyword, but we are finally here. Okay. Same thing over here. If you declare this var as a let, the scope is limited to this thing. It's not going to be accessible outside. Okay. What is it? What is it? Yes. Excellent. Now start using lead. I'm going to stop using var from now on. Right? And this is the reason. Again, other programming languages that you come in from, they have the scope is limited, that within this curly braces, the scope kind of ends over here. But JavaScript is different. But now they came up, they were like, well, we can't fix var because people are not used to it. So instead, they came up with a different keyword called let. Same thing, you declare a variable using a var keyword. Instead of var, just use let, and everything is scope based now. Yes. Rick.
So that still means that you have to use a different variable if you do nested for
No. Oh, nested? Yes. Nested? Yes. If you have. So what Raymond is talking about a nested for loop, again, you can close your ears if you don't want to hear this. If you have another loop within it, yes, you still need a different variable because you are going to use both of them. Oops. Because the reason for a nested one is your intention is you're going to use uh, this variable as well, right? And then you're going to access the array using both of them. So you still need this one, yes, because I is accessible within these things. So this means J has access. This loop has access to this one, but I does not have access to J. That's all. Again, if it is confusing, forget about it. At some point, we'll come back. For now, the more important is this is the scope issues with var, and you can use let and kind of fix this out of this. Yes, please. What happened? The previous one?
Okay, well, if you use bar when it's a nested loop like that, then
It's global.
it won't be global even though it's inside the function of the person.
Function, where's the function? There's no function. It's a for loop. Yeah, if within the function, yes, then you cannot access it. But this for loop is outside this function. The function ends over here. Right, that's still not a function that's inside this for loop. Right. So it follows the same scoping issues. Yeah. If you put this inside a function, that's a different story. Yeah, this is still if you put what Goose is saying, if I put var over here, does J become global? Yes, it becomes global. Okay, because it's not inside a function, it's inside this for loop. All right. Any other questions? Yes.
Only use let in for loops and exceptions.
No, use it everywhere. Everywhere. That's the best practice now. What is it? You just what? Okay, now that's a really good thing, and I'm glad that you guys are saying, why didn't you teach this before? Again, if I taught you this before, like a week ago, you would be like, what? I don't know what's going on. But now this is the progression. You understand what var is used for, and now you appreciate, okay, var has these problems. Now I can use let, right? And this is the comment I want to hear. But this is, if I told you guys this the first day, it would be even more confusing. But this is the point where you can really appreciate what issues with var are and what's the difference. Yes.
The other thing is, this, the lat keyword is relatively new. It's the latest version of JavaScript. So chances are you're going to be, when you're out there looking at other code, you're going to see bars.
Yeah, still a lot of people uses var.
So it's important to understand.
Right. Okay. Yes. Somebody, Michael, you had a question.
I have two
The why didn't I teach this before?
questions. No, just that
Oh.
where,
Oh.
like, can let be global if you don't declare everything
No. Global let cannot be even if I do this as a let, it's not global. It's restricted to this file. This does not become global anymore. Yeah, it will always be in a scope of something. The scope for let over here is this file, so it's not global. Yes, if you really, that's why this start the best practice start with a let, and then if you really want it global, you will come into an issue where you will be like, oh, if I make this var, I can access everything. So yes, but the first thing is start with something really restricted, and then you will come to a point where you'll realize, oh, I do need a var, and that's why you will use a var. Yes, so start with a let first, and then see how your program is going if you really need a var or not. Okay. All right. Any other questions?
We would have done group projects with var.
Group projects.
Like if we have different, if we attach different git of the JavaScript files, then it would mess up everything. If
What?
we're using var and if we like say,
Yeah.
if we have different files that we attach.
Yes, yes. If you were different.
Our statements would be like different.
Yes, well, you still won't see an issue with this one. I mean, the issue is still there. Why you will not see it if you have another for loop? Because you see, what's going on is you will not see an issue over here. Let's see if it renders. Did I stop it? I broke this. So you see it still outputs the same. Why do you not see an issue? Why? Because no, it's the same number, but over here you are redeclaring and you are saying, oh, start from zero again. So even if you were using it somewhere else, it will always start from zero. That's why you don't see an issue. I mean, the issue is still there. The only reason you don't see it because every time you come over here, the value of I is actually 4 because of this one. But over here you are saying, oh, change it to 0. So it kind of overrides that value. That's why you don't see that issue. That's why it's all the website are still working because either somebody is overriding the code intentionally or they're using a different name. That's why it's working for now. But get in the habit of using let's so that we don't run into some other issues. And that's actually the preferred way. As in, like, in any other programming languages, the scope is this, the within the parentheses, within the curly braces. But JavaScript is the only one I know that doesn't follow that. Okay? Any other question? Yes, Chris.
So on the second floor, we can delete the variable declaration is 0, and put like I less than 8 or something, and it would run through.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Start at whatever.
Yeah, yeah. You can do all kind of
No,
weird
even
stuff
if
with
you
it.
took out the I to 0, or yeah.
Something like this. There's a syntax error. Maybe I can put a small thing. There. So again, please don't watch this. This is Chris exploring the weirdness of JavaScript. But yeah, you can do all kind of weird stuff with this. But yeah, you get the idea. I'm going to put this back in so it doesn't scare other people. Nightmares, yeah. Okay, any other questions? All right, so the TAs will introduce you to the next awesome homework. Again,